So this is it. The last match week before decision day, and pretty much every single game in this match week has something important. Well, every game except for this one, which, I'll just get this out of the way because I don't want to end this video in kind of just a negative kind of vibe, but between the Quakes and the Rapids, the only thing matters in this match is Wando's record. I mean, I expect the Quakes to just keep feeding Wando's the ball in this game, and I'm hoping that he can finally not only tie the record, but break the record. He only needs a brace to break the record that is currently held by Landon Donovan, and I have a good chance that he will because we're playing the Rapids. And although the Rapids did win against Minnesota last weekend, that doesn't mean that they are a good team. They're just as bad as we are. So hopefully he does break it this week so that, we don't have to worry about it next year. And, next year is going to be interesting for Wando because with Almeida coming in, there's no guarantee that he is going to get some minutes next year because Almeida does believe in youth guys. And Wando, he's 36. Okay, so this might be one of the last chance for Wando to break the record at home. I mean, he still has the chance to break the record when he is going on the road against Seattle and his team going on the road to play them on that last match week. But, obviously I want him to break it now because this is the last home game of the season. But either way, with that out of the way, let's actually talk about the other games that has some meanings. And all these games are going to be happening on Sundays. The first 5 games will happen at 12 o'clock my time, 3 o'clock Eastern, and then the remaining 5 games will happen 2 hours after the first 5 game has kicked off. And we start with Atlanta versus Chicago. So, Atlanta United could clinch the Supporters' Shield with a win over Chicago and a loss against the Red Bulls because Atlanta currently has, I believe, a 2-point lead over Red Bulls right now. And Chicago, of course, is eliminated from the playoffs, and certainly Atlanta would hope that they can win the Supporters' Shield in this game because I believe the next game they go on the road, if I remember. And certainly if you want to win the Supporters' Shield, it's always great to win it in front of your home fans. But they do have to pray that the Red Bulls does lose to the Union, which could be highly possible. And of course, we'll talk about this game when we get there. But yeah, I expect Atlanta to win this one because Chicago, their season is done, and they're pretty much like many teams that is eliminated from the playoffs. Their players are looking forward to the off season and just looking forward to the holidays and just counting down the days before the season is over. Moving on into the next match. So DC United, they take on NYCFC. So this match I talked a little bit about it, and I talked about this doing the review of how DC United could clinch the playoffs with a win or a Montreal loss, and that is true. They have a 4-point gap over the Impact. If they beat NYCFC in this game, then they are in the playoffs. And it's hard to believe that this could be a possibility a couple of months ago, but look at that. 3 months later, after getting Wayne Rooney and after him just pretty much rallying the troops and making the rest of this team like one of the best team in the East, they are on the verge of clinching the playoffs, and they are on a verge to go into the playoff as one of the favorites of potentially reaching all the way and could maybe even defeat Atlanta United heading into the deep part of the playoffs. Well, NYCFC, though, they have a 3-point gap over Philly, and I don't think that they're going to give up that 3rd spot. I mean, as bad as NYCFC is, they need to start figuring out a way to get things going because we're getting close to the playoffs, and if you ask me who is probably one of the coldest team heading into the playoffs, it's NYCFC. And who is the most likeliest to lose the first round? It's NYCFC. I mean, this team is just in such a mess right now, and the only thing that they need to hope that they can start to get some momentum heading into the playoffs is that they got to win these last 2 games and just not once again going into the playoffs and completely just shit the beds and just get ousted in the first round of the playoffs like they've been doing in the last couple of season. But moving on, Montreal, they take on TFC. So just as I said, Montreal, they need to win in this game in order to stay off elimination. TFC is already eliminated from playoff contention, although this is going to be a really tough game for the Impact because you know TFC would love nothing more than just to eliminate Montreal from the playoffs and beating their rivals. And, you know, for the Impact, they got to win this game. I mean, this is an absolute must-win game. If they do not win this game against TFC, their season is pretty much done. And heading into that final week against the Refs, that game would not matter whatsoever. So, yeah, these 2 games will have a lot of meaning together, which is why it's great that this week most of these games are kicking off at the same time because nobody's going to get any advantage. Nobody is going to find out that they got eliminated before they actually play, or they have to wait at the end of the game to see if they're still alive or not. But moving on, next game, this is probably also one of the most kind of useless kind of game. Well, actually, I shouldn't say useless. That's a little bit harsh. But kind of the most meaningless kind of game. Columbus, of course, they do clinch the playoffs with a win. I think that's the only thing that may be matter. Or actually, the other thing that they might have to worry about is that they're 2 points behind the Union. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because they're currently in 5th and the Union is in 4th. And when we head to the knockout round, the 4th place team will get home field advantage. So it's key for Columbus to get that 4th position back. You know, they've been holding on to that 4th position for a long time, but they lost it ever since they started to go on cold again, and the Union were red hot. So, yeah, they need to, of course, beat Orlando City, and they should beat Orlando City because everybody beats Orlando City these days. But yeah, moving on into the next match. So, speaking of the Union, you know, they play against the Red Bulls, and this game means a lot to both teams. For the Union, it means a lot to them because they're only 2 points ahead of Columbus, and they want to get a win in this game so that they can get that home field advantage. They make sure that that first game of the knockout stage will be at Talent Energy Stadium. While the Red Bulls, they want to win this game because they want to head into the final day, heading into decision day, to potentially either catch Atlanta United or maybe overtake them. And they still have a chance to overtake them this week. If Atlanta lose this week and the Red Bulls win, then the Red Bulls would overtake them. Now, if this game does remain in a draw, that means it is a tie between both of these teams. And I'm not quite sure what exactly is the tiebreaker. I think it's the goal differential is the tiebreaker. And if that's the case, Atlanta still has that advantage because Atlanta by far has the best goal differential in the league. So for the Red Bulls, if they can win this game and hope that Chicago will do them a favor and give them a couple, or make sure that Atlanta does not win or lose that game, then yeah, Supporter Shield is definitely still a huge possibility for the Red Bulls. But moving on into the next one, Dallas, they play against Sporting KC, and this is probably the biggest matchup and probably the most marquee matchup of all these games because it's first versus second in the West. FC Dallas is 1 point ahead of Sporting KC, while Sporting KC is tied with LAFC. There's a 1 point difference right now between first and third, and there's a 4 point difference between first and fourth. It is very tight up there in the Western Conference, and I think if you look at this game, I think Sporting KC need to win this more than FC Dallas if they want to get that first round bye and clinch that top spot. Because FC Dallas, I think they play against the Rapids next, and that game is at home. So that game, they definitely are going to win. But for Sporting KC, they have to play against LAFC. And if they lose this match, and let's say if LAFC does win, then next week games, yeah, that is a game where it can really decide who is going to get that first round bye. And for Sporting KC, they know that they do not want that first round knockout round game that they have to face, because we have seen many times before that Sporting KC, when they get into that knockout round, they always lose that game and just completely bottle it in the playoffs. So the last thing Sporting KC fans want is to have another knockout round, which is why they are really desperate to try to get all 3 points. And we'll see. I mean, it's a very tough one to call. I mean, Dallas, they lost 1-0 to DC United. And, it's going to be interesting to see, can they continue this kind of grind it out kind of mentality that they've been doing throughout the season? Or will Sporting KC can finally show up and get a crucial 3 points that will really help heading into their next week match against LAFC at home? But meanwhile, moving on into the next one. So Houston, they take on the Sounders. So Houston are eliminated from the playoffs, and they pretty much just give up now for these last 2 weeks. I mean, they're pretty much already in off-season mode because they're kind of saving their energy for CCL next season, while Seattle is 3 points behind Sporting KC for the last first round bye week. Like I said, the Sounders are still in a race where they could potentially clinch that first round bye. And of all the Western Conference team, nobody wants the Sounders to clinch that first round bye, because that just gives them an extra week to prepare for a team that is just known to be very good in the playoffs. So certainly, I think the Sounders, if you look at all these teams, if they can win this game against Houston, which I think they definitely could, then it gets really interesting heading into decision day, because it's when we see Sporting KC versus LAFC, we thought that was probably the matchup that determined the first round bye. Oh no, all of a sudden you got Seattle sneaking behind you, and now there's a 3-team fight for the first round bye. And keep in mind, Seattle, they play against the Quakes in the final day of the season at home. So they're kind of like FC Dallas playing against the worst team in MLS. And yeah, it's really crucial for this is also why I said that it's crucial for Sporting KC to get a win in that game. And you can also say the same thing about LAFC, who they play against the Whitecaps. They want to get a win in this game so they can either keep pace with Sporting KC or overtake Sporting KC for that second spot. And, like Sporting KC, they do have to play a pretty tough kind of matchup against Vancouver, because the Whitecaps, they are really just fighting for elimination. Like, they have to win that game. They're going to fight and scratch any way and every way impossible to get that win. And it is not going to be easy whatsoever for LAFC, even though they are at home. But, when you look at this matchup and you look at what Vancouver did in the last match, it looked like the Whitecaps are pretty much giving up. Like, they can see that the writings are on the wall that they are not going to make the playoffs. And, yeah, that is pretty much it. But still, I expect them to fight and scratch every way to try to get all 3 points to heading into decision day, at least with a small chance of making the playoffs. And for LAFC, they also want to win because they want that first round bye. Although I think if you look at LAFC and Sporting KC, who wants the first round bye more? It has to be Sporting KC. I mean, I think if LAFC, even if they don't get this first round bye, I think they're still in a very good shape, because they're a new expansion team. There's not a lot of expectation in terms of this team, and even though they heading into the playoffs, there's still a lot of question in terms of the team. With no expectation and no pressure, I think this team would still do well in the knockout round and maybe expect to move on into the next round. But meanwhile, moving on into the next matchup, Portland, they play against RSL, and this is another matchup that is a huge matchup for both team. And by the way, this is also the last matchup of this week. I know this video is not very long because I'm just giving you a general overview of what exactly is happening heading into the final day and what it's at stake. But heading into this match between the Timbers and RSL, for the Timbers, they beat RSL a week ago 4-1, or 2 weeks ago 4-1 over them. And, they certainly will be heavy favorites in this game because of the fact that they've been very good at home and RSL has been just terrible on the road. However, this is where it gets interesting about this game because there's a lot of different scenario that can happen after this game, and I'm not sure should I spend like 2 or 3 minutes to explain most of the scenario, because if Portland wins this game, they'll clinch the playoffs. But if they lose this game, RSL will overtake them for that 4th spot, and now all of a sudden the Timbers are only like I think 3 points or 2 points behind the teams that is below the red line, and the Timbers of course have to play against Vancouver heading into that final week, and you don't know if Vancouver are still going to be alive or not. If they are still alive, then that is a really tough matchup for Portland, and that game is on the road too, where Portland, if you exclude that 4-1 victory against RSL, have not done well so far on the road. And even though RSL, this is the last game for RSL, if they can win this one, then they can clinch the playoffs, and it's huge that they win this one and they can clinch the playoffs because they don't have to worry about anything heading into decision day. So I think when I look at the playoff scenario on the MLS website, and I think when I did the review, I didn't even look at the playoff scenario heading into this match week to see how RSL position is not as stickier as I thought it would be. There actually could be in a very good scenario if they beat Portland in this game. But then again, RSL does not do well on the road, and knowing how they lost in that 4-1 loss against Portland a week ago, and how I'm pretty sure Portland is going to try to do the same thing to RSL, and it's really up to RSL to try to learn their lesson from that game. And if they don't learn their lesson, boy, it is really sweating time heading into the final weekend, because if RSL lose this one, then the Galaxy could potentially be 1 point behind RSL. And speaking of the Galaxy, they are actually not playing this weekend. So if you're a Galaxy fan, you're kind of also biting your nail because you're hoping RSL does not win. Because if RSL does win, then I think LA would be eliminated if I remember. Or I think they'll still have a chance to try to catch Portland for that last spot. I actually need to do some math on that one, but they're hoping that RSL does not win this matchup, but they're also hoping that if RSL does lose, then it really gives them a huge window to try to catch RSL, because if RSL lose this match, that means that the Galaxy heading into that final week will have that game in hand, and that game in hand is against Houston, and if they win that one, then the Galaxy would be in the playoffs and RSL would be out of it. So yeah, it is exciting time right now in MLS, and the good thing about the team that I'm supporting, which is the Quakes, of how they're out of the playoffs, I really don't have to worry whatsoever about what's gonna happen. I can just sit back, being a neutral, watching how everything goes on, and I don't have to really suffer any heart attack or some nerve-wracking moment of what happened in the resort of these games. But yeah, either way, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.